guys, so far you guys have been learning about using models to multiply whole numbers and decimals and to multiply decimals times decimals. So this week we're going to move into actually using some algorithms to solve these same problems, because sometimes we don't always have a picture. But before we get started, I'm going to teach you a special trick that goes along with multiplying decimals. It's kind of the same trick that we used whenever we multiplied whole numbers times 1, 10, 100, or 1,000. Remember, we trailed zeros? Well, I'm here to tell you now the same concept applies with decimals. Okay? So when you multiply decimals times 1, 10, 100, or even 1,000, you just simply move the decimal according to how many zeros are in the number. So here's an example. Easy peasy. Obviously, 1 times 3.75 is easily just good old-fashioned 3.75, because anytime we multiply a number times 1, we just get that number. In this case, we didn't move the decimal at all because we don't have any zeros in 1. Now, I'm using the same 3.75, but I'm going to multiply it times 10. Now, we do have a 0 here. So, in this case, it's the same as saying 1 times 3.75, only this time what I'm going to do is my decimal is here. I'm just going to move it on over 1 space. See? It just moves over because of 1 0. And it moves to the right. Okay? When I multiply 3.75 times 100, how many zeros are there? You got it. There are 2 zeros. That just means that we move our decimal not just 1 time, but 2 times. And now, look, 3.75 now becomes 375. And then, when we multiply 3.75 times 1,000, we're going to move our decimal a total of 3 times. And guess what? We end up having to add a 0. So, I'm just going to write 375. And so I'm going to pretend like that decimal was here and move it once, twice, and then I have to move it a 3rd time by adding a 0 here. So it was here, so I move it 1, 2, and then bloop, 3, and I have to add a 0 behind it. Pretty easy. It's just a matter of moving those zeros. And this only works when you're multiplying times 1, 10, 100, or 1,000. So here's another example. 1 times 46 and 34 hundredths. And because we're multiplying it times 1, our product just stays the same. Because really, we're just adding it to itself. Well, not even to itself. It just is. 1 time. There it is. 1 time. Now we're going to show the same number, but 10 times. So this time, all I'm going to do is move my decimal over 1. So the decimal was here, but now, since there's this 1 0 in 10, I just move it over 1 place to the right. Okay? Same thing here, because we have 2 zeros in my product. The decimal was here, I'm going to move it twice. 1, 2. You see how that works? Isn't that lovely? How we just move that decimal over without really having to do a lot of work. So if I were going to do it using standard algorithm, I would have to line up. It would be a mess. I'd have zeros all over the place. So this works very well for us. And the same thing with times 1,000. So 46 and 34 hundredths. My decimal will now move a total of 3 times, which means I'm probably going to have to add a 0. So that means it will go 1, 2, 3. There it is. There it is. It relocates, okay? And remember, when you're multiplying times 1, 10, 100, or 1,000, you're actually going to move the decimal according to how many zeros there are in the number. I'm going to add this to the right. Like that, to the right. Okay? And now here, things are a little bit different, okay? And you're going to notice something. Well, I'm no longer multiplying times 1. I'm multiplying times 100th. So instead of moving my decimal to the right this time, I'm actually going to be moving it to the left according to how many zeros. So in this particular case, okay, I am going to take into account that my decimal, if it were here, it will have moved 2 times, right? But then I have to also move it, oh no, just 2 times, sorry. So I'm going to write, because it's still the same as 1 times 46.34. So I'm still going to write 46.34. I'm just going to pretend like the decimal is here. So it was here, right? And because I have 1 0, okay, I'm going to move this 2 places. So from here, the decimal would have moved 2 places. So here, I'm going to move it 1, 2. So now my product ends up being 463 thousandths. Okay. Then, same thing here. 4, 6, 3, 4. I'm going to pretend like my decimal is here. And since I'm multiplying it times 1,000th, okay, I'm going to take it from here and I'm going to keep moving it in this direction. So it would go 1, 2, and 3. Because 1, 2, 3. So it would be here 1, 2, and 3. And here, because if there's only 2 places after the decimal, I would move it 1 and 2. Okay, so this is how we can use patterns with 100, 1, 10, 100, and 1,000 to multiply decimals by just moving the decimals without really having to do any arithmetic.